Real Madrid for a friendly game this pre-season, and he tried also in that moment to help me a little bit, to give me some advice.
What was
And
the
it was
advice?
good.
What was the advice?
No, that moment was just a tactical advice in terms of we were still probably with some habit from the past. We were still playing with a line, and Carlos said to me, and so just if I can give you an advice, drop the line because the line is so high. But I was trying to explain him that my intention was not to play with that line. That was an habit from the past, and now we are trying to adjust.
So you have.
Ghosts of pre-season are back to haunt Enzo Maresca, as finally we have come to see that the issue of Chelsea's high line has now been exposed. It's no longer something that Chelsea can ignore. It is something that Pep Guardiola exposed and really gave other teams a blueprint on how to deal with Chelsea's press. And this is something that Enzo Maresca has to look into, and Carlo Ancelotti told him. Now Chelsea were playing with a high block with a high defensive line, but that line was not aggressive because the defense line, and that's why we always talk about experience in defense. Whenever you're playing with a high line, you need to understand the position that the opponent has with the ball. If the opponent is in a position where he can play the ball forward, you drop the defense line. When the opponent is in a position where he's facing with the ball towards his goal, you push the aggressive high line to compress the space. But these simple principles of play is something that both Colwill and Chalobah cannot coach into the other defenders, and this problem fairly lies with Maresca. Manchester City, time and time again, did not hesitate, especially when players such as Palmer and Jackson did not apply pressure to players such as Kovacic and Ilkay Gundogan, allowing them to just drop deep and play those balls in behind. And Guardiola used his centre-backs as well as his ruthless number 9 Erling Haaland to look to attack those balls in behind. But the reason why this happened is because of Chelsea's forward line. And even recent statistics have indicated that Chelsea's pressing has dropped with close to 25%. So is the increase in fatigue creating problems for Chelsea? Not only Manchester City did not exploit Chelsea's high line by just playing balls over the top, but even when Chelsea's defense line was not, midfield line was not properly organized, like you can see here, Caicedo and Fernandes are marking no one, and Foden is able to receive the ball in space. They were able to play through Chelsea and have runners making runs in behind, especially when Haaland would pull Levi Colwill from that defensive line position. And this is further making Enzo Maresca's system to look just so poor. Manchester City time and time again always used to find their number 7 in behind until Guardiola adapted and realized that his number 7 is being played on side and started to ask players such as Josko Vardiol to be the ones making runs from deep. But Maresca seemed to not understand what Pep was doing, and that's how he was outclassed. This problem of playing a high line complemented with a goalkeeper like Robert Sanchez, who's clumsy and who does not know how to read the situation and make clearances, has put Chelsea in difficult problems. Factoring in Manchester City's second goal, you can clearly see Robert Sanchez being caught in no man's land, a position where if he was in goal, Manchester City do not score the second goal. But because of Sanchez's clumsiness, Chelsea are able to concede this goal because Sanchez does not understand when to step out and when to remain in his goal position. Now, this has led me to actually do my first podcast this year where I talked about Robert Sanchez. Is it time for Robert Sanchez to be dropped? And what are the alternatives to Robert Sanchez? Are we going to recall a goalkeeper this January? So kindly, I ask you, as you watch this video, please go back to my timeline and watch that podcast. That podcast is very insightful, and you're going to get a lot of information from that podcast. Please check our podcast and check our upcoming podcast. Now, before we start, do not forget to like, share, and subscribe to this channel for more videos like this.
With the high line, what the idea is, are you asking the players to play the high line and you just need to get it perfect? Or is it something they're doing based on habit from last season?
It's a habit. It's a habit. We are not working on defensive line so higher. It's a habit that I don't know. It's from last year or from years ago. I don't know. But we are trying to drop a little bit the defensive line, no more than 4 or 5 meters, just to have some advantage. Don't concede the ball in behind. But as I said, last year we already conceded many goals with this problem, and hopefully we can solve very soon.
Now there's the danger. Where's the danger then if we can't get pressure on the ball? Behind you. The back four now, read the circumstances. 1, no pressure on the ball. But watch what he does when he's under no pressure. If he turns and he plays to the fullback, you've not got a problem. If he shapes up and looks as if he's going to play in behind, there could be a threat. If you know he's clever, where he doesn't look behind, but he's like Pirlo, he'll deliver one because he's seen it 10 seconds ago, you need to be a bit careful. No pressure, be careful. Especially if there's a threat to the back. Now he's a threat to the back because he's virtually right up on top of the back line. He's a threat to the back because he's virtually up on the touchline there. He's a threat because he's got some pace and he's right on top of us. So now when the ball is there, whenever there are people who you think is a threat to our back line, you can just give yourself a yard into here there. So now when they pop one over the top, then you've got a better chance of receiving it. Now if you stay too high, too long, unless you know you're quicker than them, unless you know you're brighter than them, you're going to have to give a couple of yards in here. So nobody wins the race to the ball in behind because there's no pressure, but there's a threat. So you're going to have to give a little bit. Now, the best defender I ever saw was a lad called Maresca. Who did he play for? Coventry City. No, he didn't play for Coventry City. A good boy. He played for AC Milan, and he was always defending heel up there. He was always thinking, I can go forward, I can go back in here. They're not a problem. I can go forward, I can go back. He never was flat there. So turn your hips, turn your feet, turn your head, watch the play, read the threat, ready to go in behind. I love it. We'll play.
Let's delve right into it and actually look at how the defensive line can be organized by Enzo Maresca. He wants to play a higher block. Now, a higher block is a more offensive block, it's a more aggressive block. And in the higher block, you can employ 2 types of defensive strategies. Now, there are some managers, for example, in Bologna, where you find a manager is actually using the man marking system, meaning that he's giving each player the task to man mark their opponent. We even saw Jurgen Klopp use this in Liverpool, even in the game against Chelsea, where everybody decided to go man to man. And in this position, the only player you might find who's free is the goalkeeper. And therefore, because the team is pushing high up and is actually putting a lot of pressure, then you might find the team will just decide to go long. And therefore, in this kind of situation, what you're going to realize is that now the opponents should be quite serious in pressing, because if one player manages to lose his marker, then the entire system falls, because now they will have an extra player in build-up who will be free, and that will actually destroy the entire pressing structure. Now, if you decide to go man-marking system, also another thing you need to know is that you need to apply so much pressure high up, because if balls are played over the top, you need to trust the pace and the strength of your center backs to be able to win these balls. Otherwise, if you're not able to win these balls, then you are more susceptible to actually be destroyed and shredded with players who are making runs in behind. And because of this deadly threat, you find teams using the zonal marking system, something that even Maurizio Sarri had really emphasize in using. Now, the zonal marking system informs that the team needs to move in a structured form, in a ball-oriented form, rather than a man-marking form. You don't mark a player who doesn't have a ball, but rather you mark players around the ball and actually look to cover spaces. Now, the defense line moves relative. If the player in possession actually and in this relative playing system, you force the ball wide and then use the touchline as an extra defender. Now, when the team is in a more conserved, reserved mid-block structure, we look at the first thing about the horizontal lines. We look at the horizontal defense line. So how does the team defense line move horizontally? We're actually looking at the zonal marking system. Now, the zonal marking system is very important. So if the team is looking to press aggressively in the mid-block, meaning that they are denying the opponent space on the ball in the mid-block, then what you'll realize is that if you're playing with a man-marking system, then the same philosophy remains. That is, all players cover their markers. And therefore, if you cover your markers, you will force the opponent to go back. And if they try to use their goalkeeper to step forward, something that Manchester City have done, then you are able to put your players in the opponent is able to put their players in positions whereby they are able to hurt you. Remember, if they're able to get that extra player. And that is the merit of using man marking. And even in instances where they are able to build, one player is able to beat their man, then he drives in field, then he will be able to actually create numerical overloads against the opponent. But what about zonal marking? Zonal marking is not so interested about marking the player, but rather ensuring that you deny space to the opponent. And in this case, when the opponent has the ball, zonal marking is a ball-oriented structure. They look at the position in which the ball is likely going to move. So if the player is looking to play the ball towards the left hand side of the pitch, then the entire team looks to shift towards that side. The two players who are pressing high up, their main aim is to ensure they deny central progression. And when the ball is played towards one side, one player is the one who's supposed to shift, while the entire midfield and defensive line also shift horizontally. Now, this shift horizontally is quite different, because sometimes you might find that the fullback is the one who starts to cover the wing. So the fullback will be the one who shifts towards that side. But when the fullback shifts towards that side, the entire backline starts to also make that shift towards that right hand side. And this is how the team actually looks to make a shift. Now, the angle in which the defense line moves is actually very important. Majority of teams prefer using a flat defense line structure, meaning that the fullback is in this position. When he gets bypassed, the center back is able to move backwards and cover him. Now, that is one defensive structure system. There is the flat 3 center backs and 1 fullback structure, where the fullback in this position is the one who confronts the winger. And the line remains straight so that they are able to play the offside trap against the other opposition player who is trying to actually make runs on the other side. And because of this defensive line structure, you find a team is able to actually draw the lines quite well. There's also what we call the diagonal, meaning that this is the main diagonal, meaning that it is moving like a staircase. So the center back is moving higher, the other center back is moving higher. So in this position, the players are covering for each other. The fullback is being covered to by the center back is being covered to by the other center back, and the other center back is being covered to by the left back in that case, meaning that this is a defense line. But the problem with this structure is that it actually destroys the offside trap, because now if the opponent can get space where he can play the ball in field and have a player who's able to switch the ball towards the other side, he's actually able to get the entire team he's actually going to have greater ground, because the entire team is not actually giving him that offside trap. Then there is the other form of the diagonal, that is the inverted diagonal. Now, the inverted diagonal is that the fullback is the one who actually commits, and there are no covers. The other defenders do not cover. And in this case, the opponent, their main aim of the defense line is to ensure that the opponent is caught offside. Now, here you heavily rely upon the passing accuracy, the dual success rate of your fullback. If your fullback is very strong and you trust him, you are able to play that line. Now, we also have the vertical defensive line structure. If the player in possession is in a playable position, the defense line drops deep so that they are able to reduce the space between their line and the goalkeeper. That is one way this happens. Another thing that happens, that is when the team is actually moving diagonal. If the ball is actually being played backwards, then you'll see the defense line squeeze up. they will push up so that they can ensure that the entire opposition attacking line is caught offside. So when the ball is played over the top quick fast, you realize that the entire opposition is actually caught offside. This is something that Virgil van Dijk and Manchester City are very good at. Like Liverpool are very good at this. When the opposition is in a playable position, they drop. When it's not in a playable position, they push forward. So whenever you play balls over the top against Liverpool, you just find yourself in an offside position. Another thing you realize is that in the defensive third, the same structure also applies. You might find when the fullback shifts towards the left, the midfield, the defense line moves in a straight line. Or the defense line can also choose to move in a diagonal line where they look to cover for each other. Again, the problems come with the offside trap, which is actually broken when the defense line decides to move in a straight diagonal with regards to the position in which the fullback covers. And even sometimes the inverted diagonal can also be used, but most of the time we've realized is that the wingers are the ones who are actually tasked to cover the opposition player when they are wider and in a much deeper position, allowing the fullback to cover the half space position and deny the opponent that space and that energy to actually look to destroy. Now, when the opponent is in this position, we saw also another new zonal marking system. The zonal marking system here is this one center back moves towards the near post, the other center back moves towards the half space, the other one moves toward the fullback moves towards the back post. And in this system, the two holding midfielders actually sit in front of the 18-yard box. The fullback's main task is to deny this player the opportunity to reach that position. And once he reaches that position to make a cutback, the center back in the near post is the one who's supposed to clear that ball or hit it out for a corner. The other center back is supposed to cover the striker. And if the team decides to use a man marking approach, and one player manages to beat their marker, then this is the position whereby you find zones have been left unattended to by the team, leaving the team susceptible to counterattacks and huge threats in behind. Now, analyzing this defensive structure and defensive setup, you're able to see how man marking and zonal marking can go a long way in trying to improve Enzo Maresca's overall defensive structure in his team. This is something that cannot just be coached one day, but it's something that Enzo Maresca needs to do and work on quickly and fast. The fans will not be patient, and this is something that he really needs to get working onto. So if you've enjoyed this video, do not forget to like, share, and subscribe, and thanks for watching.